Welcome back to the Profit Builder Unscripted. Today we're talking about how do you start to notice your thinking in order to maybe shift the experience that you're having in life. All right, let's jump in. For the last several weeks, I've had this reoccurring thought that keeps running through my head, and it sounds something like this: change your thinking, change your life. And as I've been thinking about it, one of the things that I feel like for me has been my greatest learning or my greatest ability to be able to shift or change things in my life that I wanted to change, or to change my experience, whether it's that I'm, woke up this morning and I was in a bad mood, and usually our first response, and I don't know about you, but for me, my first response is, what's making me irritated? What's frustrating me? What's ticking me off right now? And we kind of have a tendency to look out at our life and go, who's to blame or what is to blame for how I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing right now? And one of the things that I have gotten into the habit of, especially I would say in the last couple of years, has been to really stop myself and ask myself a different question. Instead of looking out and asking myself, what is it or who is it that's irritating me or frustrating me, but actually asking like kind of the question behind that, like, what is it that's going on for me that has me feel frustrated? And if it's not that situation, or if it's not that person, what is it that, what is it that I'm really afraid of? Or what is it that I'm disappointed about? Or what is it that has that angst going on for me? And it's really interesting because sometimes I come up with answers like, well, that really upsets me or frustrates me about them, but I think that it's going to make me look really bad with that client. Or I'm afraid that if they're not doing that thing the way I want them to do it, that it's going to mean that I'm going to have more work done on me. Or I will give you an example of very recently. I was really frustrated with my husband, and I was really frustrated by the fact that he had not done something that I had asked him to do. And I got to, I woke up one morning and I was super irritated about it, and I was really frustrated, and I'm like, oh, it must be all about him. And so I like kind of let him know I was really frustrated and angry and so on and so forth. And then a little bit later, I was like, why did that bother me so much? I could have approached that conversation from a lot of different places. Why was I so upset about it? And it made me stop and go, what was I not communicating about that situation? And what I realized is I gave him sort of like this level of communication about why that was important to me. But there was actually another level of conversation I could have had about, well, I got all these things going on, and I'm afraid if that doesn't get done, that this won't get done. And then I'm going to have to pick it up, and I'm feeling really overwhelmed. And as I started to think more through it, the truth was I was just feeling really overwhelmed. And instead of going, I'm really overwhelmed, and going to him and going, I really need your help. Can we talk about this? I'm not sure why this isn't working or what's the holdup, but here's what's going on for me. And, what it did is it makes me, when I can stop and I can observe my own behavior, when I can stop and when I'm in, when I say like observe, change your thinking, change your life. When I can think about something differently rather than feel victimized by what's happening outside of me, when I can take 100% responsibility. And when I say responsibility, just to be clear, I mean the ability to respond. I don't mean shame, blame, and fault. So a lot of times when we hear the word responsibility, we think fault or blame. And really, truly, it just means the ability to respond. So when I'm able to take 100% responsibility for my own experience in the moment and really look at what's going on for me and look at my thinking that is driving my behavior, that sometimes what I can, if I'm willing to take responsibility for my own experience and start to really look at my thoughts that are driving my outward perspective, then I can start to have a different conversation. So with my husband, I went back to him and I said, so here's all what's going on for me. I know I'm frustrated about that, and I got that thing that we had that exchange about that I wanted to get done, didn't get done, so on and so forth. And we could have, maybe there's different ways that that could have happened. And it was true, he didn't do it. But my reaction had more to do with what was going on internally for me. And when I was willing to stop and notice my own experience and ask myself the question, what's really going on for me? I was able to go and have a different kind of conversation and a different result, because now it was like I was inviting him into the conversation. I had a similar situation happen with somebody on my team recently, where I was super frustrated. I was really like irritated by the fact that they had not done some things that they said they were going to do. And when I looked at it more closely and I was willing to take responsibility for my part and start to notice my own thinking of, well, it's you, or there's something else that's, there's something wrong here. Yes, there was something wrong here, but when I was willing to also take responsibility for it and notice my own thinking and really start to ask more questions of myself why I was irritated, then I could start to get into a deeper, more meaningful and useful conversation with her about what needed to change and what needed to shift. So, I am sharing this with you because sometimes I think that we kind of go with just the first thing that comes to our mind, or that we get into reaction to how we're thinking, whatever those immediate thoughts are, without stopping and asking the question, why am I feeling that way? Why does that upset me? Why does that bug me? What is it? And sometimes here's the truth. This is the part about taking responsibility. The truth is sometimes when we're willing to stop and ask that question a little deeper, it's like we're upset with ourselves. We're disappointed with ourselves. The situation with my husband, the situation with the person on my team. When I was willing to ask myself the question, why does it upset me? And I was willing to take responsibility at the same time, then I could start to see, well, it was really my stuff, my angst, my frustration with myself that I hadn't, done something. But when I can take responsibility in that way, I can now start to be at more choice. And that's the thing that's such a blessing and such a great thing about personal responsibility, is that when we take personal responsibility and having that ability to respond, we can start to have much more agency over our lives and really start to transform our experience of day-to-day living. And we can transform how our relationships are, because we're no longer victims of what's happening around us. And so I have a quote that I want to share with you by Margaret Thatcher, and I just love this quote. And she starts and she says, watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. And watch your habits, for they become your character. And your character becomes your destiny. So what we think, we become. So I just first time, and I read that years ago. The first time I read it, it just really resonated with me, because it's, again, when we can start to observe, like, what's the thoughts in our head, and really start to evaluate and ask ourselves the question, Really useful? Is that what I believe? Am I, and taking personal responsibility, that those two things can really change your thinking, change your life, like start to let you make different choices. And I'm going to add here too, I think that includes like the self-talk, the negative chatter that we have in our head about ourselves or about other people, to really stop, like the situation with Tim, my husband, or the situation with somebody on my team, looking at them and the conversation I was having about them, to stop and go, is that really true? Is that a useful conversation? Which is where the part about taking responsibility really helps, in terms of shifting that. So just notice it. Notice if you're, that's my invitation to you. Notice if your negative self-talk about yourself or other people is just really be willing to consider, is that really true? And is it maybe not true? And is there something else that I want to understand or know? Is there some other question that I want to ask? Is there something else that's really going on? All right. I hope you found this to be, maybe found some inspiration, maybe found some little nugget within today's conversation. Make sure if you like the content in this podcast to subscribe or follow me below. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the Profit Builder Unscripted. Thanks for being here today.